I've wanted to make this video for many years now, but I've never felt like I could give this game the justice it deserves. I'm going to do my best to describe what Lunar means to me and shed some light on this wonderful RPG. I'm hoping that I can generate some interest in this title for anyone that has never played it and stir up some fond memories for those that have. I'll be talking about many different aspects of the world and its characters, but I won't be sharing any spoilers. I don't want to ruin the experience for anyone who may want to play Lunar for the first time. With all that being said, let's dive in. I was first introduced to Lunar by a high school friend of mine. We were both heavily into Japanese RPGs and anime, so he knew this game would be right up my alley. I went over to his house one afternoon and he showed me this game he had been playing called Lunar: Silver Star Story Complete for the PlayStation. I have to admit that I wasn't blown away initially seeing the game's chibi sprites and two-dimensional backgrounds. This was the era of the PlayStation where games like Final Fantasy VII and Parasite Eve were showing off pre-rendered cinematics and 3D character models. I had never heard of Lunar before that point because I never owned a Sega CD or Saturn. It wasn't until my friend passed the controller to me that I started to understand what he liked about the game. I remember watching the opening cinematic when we restarted the console, and I was immediately taken aback by the anime-inspired visuals and theme song. That was the first time I'd ever seen a game incorporate anime cutscenes. Sure, characters from Final Fantasy VII had strong anime influences thanks to the brilliant work of Tetsuya Nomura, but this was an actual 2D animated intro like you'd see in any given anime series, title theme and all.
Instantly we see it, the time to grow and be it, when everything is pinned on a hold.
I was immediately impressed and wanted to know more about the characters I'd seen in this brief introduction. The intro cinematic had piqued my interest, but the opening dialogue scene between Alex and Null ensured this game had captured my curiosity and had no intention of letting go. Follow that up with yet another animated cutscene with Ramus, and the somewhat cheesy yet lovable voice acting between the characters, and yeah, it's safe to say that I was hooked.
Without waking the dragon. Then we can get a fantastically huge diamond from its lair worth thousands and thousands of silver, making us filthy, stinking rich and very popular in the process!
I could already see the charm these characters had, and the storytelling had that familiar JRPG style that I had grown to love from games like Chrono Trigger, Lufia, and Breath of Fire. The story of Lunar isn't overly complicated, but I think that's part of its charm, and that's a word you might hear a lot in conversations about this game. It's a story of adventure, struggling against incredible odds, the importance of coming of age and the strength of self-discovery, but at its heart lies a classic story of true love. The innocence of the characters and their growing ties to one another, whether it be the bonds of friendship or something stronger, helped me learn about each of them as individuals and what motivated them to join Alex on his quest. What starts as a journey to become the next legendary Dragon Master turns into a much bigger task of saving the world from a Dark Emperor. As the events unfold in Alex's adventure, the courage of he and his friends is tested again and again. It's under these circumstances that I grew to love the cast of Lunar and shared the hardships and triumphs these characters experienced throughout their fantastic adventure. I felt like I knew the characters and became invested in the story. I wanted them to succeed, and I, as the player, had the power to help them reach their goals. The combat in Lunar can be challenging at times, but not unfairly so. For example, the first enemies you encounter are no pushover, and may actually kill you if you aren't careful. I had to spend some time grinding out experience points to level my party up before I felt comfortable proceeding through the dungeon. Keep in mind, this is a classic JRPG, so a bit of grinding is to be expected unless you want a greater challenge. However, unlike normal enemies, bosses scale with Alex's level. But even then, the boss levels cap at 50, so if you're struggling later in the game, you can still increase your party levels to gain an advantage. One of the more difficult systems in Lunar is its inventory management. Each character has their own exclusive inventory which requires some tactical planning. Say for example, a character falls in battle, and they were carrying the only item you had that could revive them. Whoops. This meant that I had to carefully consider who carried what items with their very limited inventory space. This is something I have yet to see in another JRPG, and it would be redesigned in the following remakes: Silver Star Harmony for the PSP and Lunar Legend for the Game Boy Advance. But more on that later. Probably my favorite part of Lunar's combat is the voice acting.
Check this out.
To this day, I find myself randomly shouting some of my favorite lines. It's such a small thing, but it gives the cast even more character and charm, and has provided some wonderful memories. Voice acting, when done well, can help bring any character to life, and Lunar's characters are no exception. It's just another way that helped me feel like I really knew the characters and made me grow even more fond of them. That being said, I can't mention the voice acting without talking about the music. I think anyone that has played Lunar can attest to how memorable the music is, especially the songs. A lot of people that have never even played Lunar have heard or at least know about the boat song. The boat scene is another shining example of what makes this game so magical for me. Luna has a lovely voice, and the first time I heard Wind's Nocturne, I knew this game would be something special. And I was right.
Wishing on a dream that seems far off, hoping it will come today. Into the starlit night, foolish dreamers turn their gaze, waiting on a shooting star.
It's been 23 years and I still remember every lyric to that song. I'm not ashamed to admit that I sing it in the shower sometimes because I love it that much. While the songs are amazing pieces of music, I don't want to understate the game's overall score. The battle theme is just as memorable, and I'm filled with nostalgia every single time I hear the title theme. Music is a strong part of Lunar's story and is incorporated very well. Some of the scenes later in the game still give me chills. A lot of love was put into Lunar, even down to the packaging. Working Designs, the publisher for the North American release, created a beautiful presentation with the collector's edition. The complete set includes a hardback color manual, a cloth map of the world, the game's soundtrack, a making of disc with behind the scenes footage and interviews, and of course the game itself. The making of disc even includes a hidden minigame called Lords of Lunar, which is a multiplayer game inspired by Warlords on the Atari 2600. Okay, so you've heard everything I've said, and you're wondering how to play. Awesome! This video is primarily focused on the PlayStation port of the Sega Saturn remake of the original game, but there are several different versions of Lunar. A physical copy for the PlayStation can be a little pricey, especially if you want the collector's edition. But if you're open to emulation, that's always an option, and if you like it, you can consider getting a physical copy for your collection. As difficult as it will be, I still want to collect every version because I love the game that much. It is my favorite video game of all time after all. Keeping that in mind, I think the most accessible version of Lunar can be found on the PSP. This version is another remake called Silver Star Harmony. This more modern take comes with a few quality of life changes like a shared inventory system and new combat features. While my favorite version is Silver Star Story Complete, Harmony is a close second because of how faithfully it recreates the previous games. The biggest changes are the new voice acting and music, as well as a full visual overhaul, including new character sprites and maps. The story is identical to Complete, with the exception of a brief prologue sequence and some translation tweaks. If you can suffer through the questionable introduction, I promise the voice acting gets a lot better.
Can't be! This power is...
Without a doubt, it's Althena's power.
What the hell?
I am uncertain, but perhaps this is the...
This time, I shall put an end to you, once and for all.
Mercifully, this section only takes a few minutes to complete, and acts as a combat tutorial more than anything. As I mentioned previously, hunting down a physical copy is still a bit expensive, but cheaper than the PlayStation port if you're a collector. The last remake I'll talk about is the Game Boy Advance title, Lunar Legend. This one is enjoyable overall, but it does come with some hangups. Being on the GBA, the sound quality is not what you might expect from a Lunar title, and this version lacks voice acting and animated cutscenes, something fans of the series have grown accustomed to. The developers did try to capture the essence of the cutscenes with still frames taken from the original scenes, so they did what they could given the hardware limitations. Changes have also been made to the gameplay, with the combat and inventory systems being similar to those in Silver Star Harmony. Additionally, the story has undergone some changes, but the overall feel of the game remains more or less intact, albeit with some minor translation quirks. While I do enjoy Lunar Legend, I feel like new players would have a better experience with other versions. However, it's worth playing if you like the other games and want to see a slightly different take on the story progression. There are other Lunar games I'd love to talk about, such as the popular sequel, Eternal Blue, but that's a topic for another video. This is about revisiting where it all started. From the original game to all of its remakes, this game has had a profound impact on my life and my appreciation and passion for gaming. The characters dug their way into my heart and have lived there rent-free ever since. The music is so memorable I find myself replaying it in my mind almost daily, and I don't think I've ever experienced a better love story through this medium. I hope I've been able to generate some interest in Lunar if you've never played it, or stir up some nostalgia for those of you that share my passion for this wonderful game. Let me know in the comments if you plan to try it out, or what you think of Lunar if you've already played it. And if you've made it this far, thanks for watching.